Hey guys, tonight we slip toward the heart of the galaxy, where time folds, light swirls, and something very old is awake. You're not lying in bed anymore. You're drifting weightless, thoughtless, into a part of the universe most humans will never get close to. A place so far from Earth that the sunlight you knew has thinned to a whisper. Here, stars no longer twinkle. They crowd together shoulder to shoulder, packed in like a city skyline gone incandescent. You're headed toward the center of the Milky Way. Roughly 26,000 light-years away from your bedroom ceiling, the galactic core sits in permanent twilight, obscured from our eyes by curtains of interstellar dust. But you, lucky sleeper, have a front row seat. Through invisible windows, the universe peels back its layers. Radio waves hum like whispers. Infrared light outlines the bones of stars. And there it is, the gravitational furnace that binds our galaxy together. It's a place both ancient and restless. A place so strange, even time doesn't behave. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Midnight in Minnesota, 3 a.m. in Berlin. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You float like a piece of pollen drifting toward the center of a cosmic whirlpool. All around the sky is not black, but textured, thick with stars dust and the faint blush of long-dead radiation. You're entering Sagittarius, the direction in our sky that points straight to the galactic core. It's like falling into the eye of a hurricane made of starlight and ancient gravity. At the heart of it all is a monster, a supermassive black hole called Sagittarius A, pronounced A star. It's not just big, it's unimaginable. 4 million times the mass of our sun crammed into a volume smaller than the orbit of Mercury. If you put it where our sun is, now Earth would be inside it. Well, briefly. And yet, it's quiet. Not roaring with jets of radiation like some other galactic cores. Not gobbling up stars like popcorn. Just sitting there, watching, or maybe waiting. You drift closer and the stars thicken. Here, within a few light years of Sagittarius A, the density of stars is more than 1 million times higher than around our sun. It's like entering a city where every building is a sun and every alley glows. But this isn't just a star cluster tourist trip. You're here for something stranger. Something that, despite decades of research, physicists still can't quite explain. Because in this part of the galaxy, things start to go weird. First off, gravity doesn't play fair. Around Earth, gravity is predictable. Drop a ball, it falls. Go fast enough, you orbit. But near Sagittarius A, gravity is like a mood swing. It bends light into pretzels. It stretches time like bubblegum in a warm car. You might pass through an hour and find out a week's gone by for someone else. And for you right now, time is syrupy. Thoughts slow. Your heartbeat would too if you still had one here. In this dream physics zone, you're not a body anymore, just awareness. And awareness is enough. In 2020, scientists used 30 years of data to measure the movements of a single star called S2 as it slingshotted around the black hole. They wanted to confirm a prediction from Einstein's general relativity that gravity warps not just space, but time. And sure enough, they saw it. As S2 whipped around the black hole at 3%, the speed of light, its light stretched redshifted, as if time itself were lagging. So Einstein was right again. Gold star. But also, not quite. Because if you look closer than mainstream headlines go, there are discrepancies. Little wobbles, orbits not quite smooth, pulses not quite consistent. Something feels off, as if there's a second player on the field, invisible, heavy, maybe even intelligent. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. For now, you hover in the outskirts of this gravitational cathedral, watching light bend like heat waves off pavement. You're close enough to feel your sense of up and down dissolve. Nothing here orients you. There's no floor, no edge, just movement, circular, elliptical, chaotic, like a ballet choreographed by someone who never believed in symmetry. You pass a star glowing orange like a dying coal. It's older than our sun, and it orbits the black hole like a moth circling a void. Other stars swing around too, each with paths dictated not just by Sagittarius A, but by something else. You feel it. A second pull. Subtle. Like a whisper beneath a bass note. Space itself here feels tense. Like it's hiding something. And maybe it is. By the way, ever wonder what it would feel like to fall into a black hole? Some physicists say for a brief moment it would feel normal. No sudden jolt, no fire, just silence. Until tidal forces stretch you thinner than spaghetti and quantum physics quietly deletes you from memory. Don't worry, you probably won't survive this. But that's fine. You're not really falling in. Not yet. For now, you're an observer. A gentle eye floating above the deepest truth in our galaxy. Watching, wondering, drifting closer. The stars grow tighter around you. Time begins to loop back on itself, not literally but perceptually. Everything feels like it's already happened and is happening again. Light from some stars has been curved so far around the black hole that you see the same star in multiple places. A triple illusion of one truth. And still, no roar, no fireworks, just a low, persistent hum, a sense of pressure, of questions stacking up unanswered. What is at the heart of the galaxy? And more disturbingly, what might be hiding just beside it? As you approach the galactic core, gravity stops playing fair, stretching time and bending paths like taffy in a furnace. You drift deeper now, passing through invisible membranes of gravitational intensity. Each layer folds you a little more into the strange physics of the galactic core. It's like walking down a staircase made of velvet and equations, each step softer, heavier, more warped. Gravity here isn't just a force. It's a mood, a tone, a dominant key in the song of space. You don't fall in this place, you curve spiraling inward, like leaf litter caught in a whirlpool. And time, sweet reliable time, is no longer your friend. It stretches and bubbles like you're watching the seconds pass through a funhouse mirror. Let's slow things down for a moment though. Really, the slowing is happening to you. Remember general relativity, that old chestnut that says mass bends space-time, and the more massive the object, the more extreme the bend. Well, around Sagittarius A, space is so deeply curved, it's less like a trampoline with a bowling ball and more like a bathtub with the drain open. Everything tips toward the center. Even the math starts gasping for air. And that includes you. Your experience of time is dilating. For someone far away, your motion looks slow, syrupy, distorted. But from your point of view, it's all smooth, linear, quiet, just like dreams always are while you're inside them. This is the difference between coordinate time, the time clocks far from gravity experience, and proper time, the time you feel in your own skin. Around a supermassive black hole, these two clocks part ways, like best friends who just learned they voted differently. Your seconds are not Earth's seconds anymore. A star swings past you, looping around the core in a tight, violent ellipse. Its orbit should obey Newton's laws, or even Einstein's. But it doesn't. The path is off. Too fast here, too slow there. The problem isn't the math, it's the mass. There's more gravity than expected. Like someone added weights under the table and never told the magician. Scientists track these stars obsessively. They call them S-stars, and they're the closest known stars to the galactic center. The most famous one, S2, makes a full orbit every 16 years. At its closest approach, it zips by at over 7,500 kilometers per second. That's fast enough to circle the Earth in under 10 seconds. You watch it now flickering like a firefly caught in the breath of a tornado. And it doesn't quite match predictions. The light shifts redder as it nears pericenter, the point of closest approach, just as Einstein promised. But there's a faint extra twitch in its path. Not enough to panic. but just enough to make astrophysicists go very quiet in their Zoom calls. You hover beside a trail of photons, light that left that star minutes ago, or hours. Who knows, it corkscrews around space like a drunk moth. The curve isn't elegant, it's jarring, wobbly, like space-time is vibrating in a note only gravity can hear. And here's a strange thing, you're not even inside the event horizon. This is the part of space where physics is supposed to behave, and already it's not playing nice. A quick joke, just to lighten the existential dread. What did one relativistic physicist say to the other at the Galactic Center? I'm not late, your clock is broken. Okay, not the best icebreaker, but let's face it, there's no bar at the center of the galaxy. You look back now and time behind you appears different, slower, or is it faster? Your mind fumbles. You're experiencing time along a geodesic, but so much mass warps the straight line you're following that nothing really feels straight anymore. The shortest path is a curve, and the most logical explanation is the one that makes your head tilt. Another star flashes past. This one's orbit is more chaotic, less like a path, more like a nervous scribble. Astronomers suspect some stars have had close encounters with things we haven't detected. Invisible objects, masses unaccounted for, maybe stellar mass black holes, maybe something worse. The kind of worse that doesn't emit light, doesn't make noise, and doesn't sign its name on any model. You keep floating, and now you feel it, not just gravity, but a weird elasticity in time. Like it's trying to snap back into shape but can't quite. Physicists call this frame dragging, the idea that massive rotating bodies like a black hole drag space-time around with them. Imagine stirring a thick soup. That's what Sagittarius A does to time. It swirls it. It pulls the past forward and flattens the future into a pancake. If you had a clock in your hand, don't worry, you don't. It would be ticking at a fraction of its usual rate. That same clock on Earth would leave yours behind like it's running laps. To Earthlings, your time is crawling. To you, theirs is speeding off into a blur. Here's the truly bizarre thing, this isn't just theory. It's been measured. Satellites around Earth have confirmed tiny frame-dragging effects using gyroscopes. So imagine how extreme that effect must be this close to a supermassive black hole. Time here is not absolute. It's optional. And yet, somehow your mind is adjusting, like a lucid dreamer realizing they're flying and deciding not to question it. Your body no longer protests. Your thoughts stretch to match the rhythm of the core. You are in a very real sense syncing with the galaxy's deepest pulse, a pulse that doesn't match what we thought it would be. And that discrepancy is what's been keeping scientists up at night. You don't need a telescope to feel it. You are the telescope, a witness to gravitational confusion, a front-row audience to the broken script of our universe. Something isn't adding up. Gravity is playing by rules we don't fully understand, or maybe someone added a rule book we've never read. Whatever it is, it's pulling at space-time with invisible fingers. And those fingers aren't just warping where objects go. They're changing when they arrive. You drift through layers of warped space-time where seconds swell and collapse, and moments lose their order. Here's something they don't tell you in science documentaries. Time is less like a river and more like a jello mold, one that shivers when you poke it. And near the galactic core, time has definitely been poked. You drift now through the innermost parsecs of the Milky Way, not far from where those strange orbital misfires were recorded. The light here moves strangely. It doesn't flow from stars, it leaks, bending around curves you can't see, flaring unpredictably, as if skipping frames in an old film. It's hard to explain, but time slips, not forward, not backward, just sideways. You feel like you're arriving before you leave, observing something that hasn't happened yet, and remembering something you didn't experience. A paradox with no teeth, just a smile. Einstein warned us this would happen. The closer you get to extreme gravity, the more time itself becomes a malleable property. Not broken, just bended. But what he didn't predict was the texture of it. Here time is grainy. Sometimes it loops. Not literally, but in the sense that you perceive events repeating themselves. You see a light flicker across a cluster of stars and then flicker again. Was that déjà vu a lensing artifact or a quantum stutter in your dream state cognition? You're reminded of a lesser-known idea from theoretical physics called closed time-like curves. In some solutions to Einstein's equations, like those describing rotating black holes, it's mathematically possible for a particle to follow a path through space-time that loops back on itself. In other words, time travel. Not the cinematic DeLorean variety, but a closed circuit, like running laps on a track where the finish line touches the start. Most physicists think these curves are theoretical artifacts, things the universe doesn't allow in practice. But near the core, with all its gravity, energy, and motion, the rules are stretched thin, thinner than usual. And in that stretching, you feel something. Something is looping. You pass by an object, could be a neutron, star, could be a dead satellite, hard to say. And then, inexplicably, you see it again. Slightly ahead. No, wait, that was ahead. Now it's behind again. The sequence of your observation is losing integrity. Your mind attempts to impose cause and effect, but they're starting to smear together. Physicists studying this region call these data noise, red-shifted pulses that arrive slightly early or slightly late and can't be traced to any known source. But what if the noise isn't noise? What if it's a symptom? A symptom of layered time, a space where timelines crisscross like old cassette tape tangling inside a player. There's a fringe hypothesis, definitely not mainstream but charming in its rebellion, called chronological interference. It suggests that in regions of space-time with extreme curvature, information from adjacent moments might leak into each other, like a memory that arrives before the experience, like the shadow of a thought that hasn't yet happened. And sure, this isn't in any physics textbook, but let's be honest, neither is this dream you're having right now. You cross a field of stretched starlight photons bent halfway around the black hole. Some of them left their stars centuries ago, others just seconds. But they arrive together tangled up in gravitational lensing like threads pulled too tight. If someone on Earth were watching you, they'd see you moving slowly, agonizingly so. But to you, they're flickering in fast forward. Stars live and die in fast cuts. The universe evolves in time-lapse. You are not traveling through time anymore. You're falling between its folds. And then you feel it again, that cosmic shiver. A moment of vertigo without movement. Like you just arrived from a place you never left. Here's where it gets odd. Well, odder. Multiple pulsars, those highly magnetized rotating neutron stars, exist within this region. They pulse with exquisite regularity, tick, 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 like the metronomes of the universe. But near the core, some of them skip. Just a beat, just a blink, enough to notice, enough to question, and not all in the same direction. Some pulses arrive early, some late. One even appeared to reverse its cycle for half a second. Observers assumed instrumentation error, but the error didn't repeat on Earth. It repeated here. Let's zoom out metaphorically. There's a tension growing in the background. You can feel it building behind the stars, an edge to the silence, something off stage. Some astrophysicists have started to wonder whether our models are missing something. Not just a dark matter halo or a rogue black hole, but a more profound variable. What if time itself is being twisted by something else in the core, not just the black hole, something near it, something heavy enough to disturb the rhythm of space, but subtle enough to hide between equations? You drift toward a region mapped by a curious anomaly. In 2018, astronomers discovered something they called the G-Cloud's strange gas and dust objects that survive unusually close to Sagittarius A without being torn apart. One of them, G2, seemed on a collision course with the black hole, and yet emerged intact. Q raised eyebrows and multiple late-night Slack messages. Maybe it's just gas. Maybe it's stars wrapped in dust. Or maybe, this is the fun theory, it's something else entirely. A massive object cloaked in a cloud of particles. Something resistant to tidal shredding. Something coherent. You glide through that space now. Whatever was there isn't visible, but the light behind you bends differently when you look through it, as if space itself is being pinched. and with it, time. You realize suddenly that you don't know how long you've been here. Minutes, hours, lifetimes. More importantly, you no longer care. Because here's the terrifying part. The longer you stay near this core, the more your sense of time synchronizes with the warped clock of the region. Your internal metronome is adapting. The tick-tock of Earth is a distant echo. You're beginning to forget what a second used to feel like. You've slipped into a timeline that doesn't match the rest of the galaxy, and something else might already be living here. You approach a lone star spiraling far too close, locked in an impossible orbit that defies every gravitational model. It drifts into view like a dancer on a broken stage, graceful, confident, and completely wrong. The star's name, at least to Earth-based scientists, is S4716. It's one of those infamous S stars again, but this one is different. You hover near its track, now mesmerized. Its orbit loops perilously close to Sagittarius A, tighter than anything thought stable, as if it's flirting with the edge of eternity. A 4-year orbit. Just 4. That's less than the time between Olympic Games, and yet it survives cycling endlessly through one of the most extreme environments in the known galaxy. It shouldn't be here. But here it is. And it's calm. You glide beside it as it rounds pericenter, moving at a velocity that would shame most comets. Nearly 8,000 kilometers per second. It's fast enough to lap Earth's equator 200 times in a minute. The airless silence here makes it feel slow, like watching a blade cut through honey. The star shivers slightly in your vision. Or is it space itself that trembles? Here's the thing, stars like this shouldn't be able to form or survive in these conditions. The gravitational tides this close to the black hole would stretch and shear most stellar objects into streams of light and regret. And yet S4716 persists. Not only that, it's in a stable, repeating orbit, one that astrophysicists can't fully explain. You pause in its wake. The trail it leaves isn't visible, but it's not gone either. Light bends differently here. Space remembers movement like footprints in snow. This brings us to an unsettling open debate among physicists. How do stars migrate inward in environments like this without being destroyed? There are a few theories, all of them uncomfortable. One suggests that these stars were scattered inward by gravitational interactions, booted into tight orbits by close passes with other stars or black holes. Another proposes that they formed right here somehow, in dense clumps of gas, protected from the black hole's hunger. But neither theory fully explains why they're still here. You float closer, examining the star's light. There's something peculiar about its spectrum. Not just red-shifted from speed, but off. It flickers with a kind of phase instability, a subtle change in timing that shouldn't exist, like the signal has passed through a region of warped space-time and come out the other end slightly scrambled. This is where a lesser-known hypothesis enters stage-left gravitational solitons. In theoretical physics, a soliton is a stable wave that maintains its shape over long distances. Some theorists have proposed that in extreme gravitational environments, it's possible to form stable, self-reinforcing space-time structures. Pockets, if you like, that could cradle matter safely near a black hole. What if S4716 is caught in one of these solitons? What if it's not orbiting through smooth space, but sliding along a warped groove, a gravitational track that acts like a protective lane? There's no proof, only math. But that math is strangely convincing. You drift across the star's orbit, and for a moment you feel something almost tactile. A pressure, a squeeze, as if the space around you resists your movement slightly, like trying to walk through syrup. You blink or do whatever the dream equivalent of blinking is, and suddenly you realize the star is behind you now. No, it's ahead. No, it's both. Time is once again playing games. You're observing multiple iterations of the same object, staggered slightly across light paths, bent by massive gravity. You think of a carousel, each horse frozen in a different phase of the cycle, and you're the observer in the middle, watching every position at once. This impossible orbit is a message. Not a message to you personally, of course. Don't get excited. But it's a message to the equations that govern the galaxy. a rude little note pinned to the corkboard of reality. Your models are incomplete because the orbit isn't just tight, it precesses. Each time the star completes a loop, its closest approach shifts. Not randomly, not chaotically, predictably, but not quite as predicted. General relativity does account for this kind of precession. It's what explains Mercury's strange orbit in our own solar system. But the numbers for S47 don't match. The precession is too strong. So what gives either there's more mass here than we think, or mass is being shaped by something we don't yet understand? You consider the implications. Could it be dark? Matter a localized concentration wrapping around the core like invisible cotton candy, maybe? But dark matter usually behaves more polite, diffuse, non-interacting. This seems personal. Could it be a cluster of small black holes, dozens, even hundreds, orbiting silently, hidden in gravitational fog? That's another possibility. One we'll explore later. No foreshadowing, you didn't hear that. You loop again with the star, and suddenly you see a faint shimmer, a brief distortion across a field of starlight. As if something invisible passed between you and the background. You wait. Nothing. Or perhaps everything. A dry cosmic joke to distract you. What's the worst part about being trapped in an impossible orbit? There's no way out, but at least you'll be late for everything. You're reminded now of a peculiar mathematical curiosity. In higher dimensional theories like those found in string theory, it's possible that gravity operates differently on small scales. The behavior of S4716 might be the result of extra-dimensional leakage. Gravity not obeying our 3D assumptions, again unproven, but strangely poetic, because this orbit, this impossible dance feels like a metaphor. A lone object caught in a gravitational embrace it can't escape, but also can't resist. It's beautiful, it's terrifying, it's utterly unexplained, and worst of all, it's not alone. There are others like it, orbits that shouldn't exist yet persist, patterns that don't fit, but repeat. And slowly, you begin to wonder, what if these anomalies aren't accidents? What if they're footprints? You float through space that trembles not violently, not with any grand explosion, but with the softness of breath, a pressure change in a room you didn't realize had walls. It begins as a barely there tug, like the universe just shifted its weight on the other side of the mattress. Then it comes again. A pulse, a ripple. Nothing you see, nothing you hear, just the unmistakable sensation that something massive has moved. But when you look for the source, there's nothing. No merger, no explosion, no dying star throwing off its final scream. Just the dark, serene ballet of stars orbiting the galactic core like nothing has happened at all. These are gravitational waves. You've heard of them, ripples in space-time that race across the cosmos when colossal objects collide. Earth detected them for the first time only recently when two black holes crashed together over 1 billion years ago. The instruments that caught them were so sensitive they could detect distortions smaller than a proton. But even they would have struggled with the waves you're feeling now, because here they don't make sense. They're too strong, too clean, too frequent, and too directionless. You glide through another wave. It washes over you without effort or resistance, like passing through the memory of a breeze. Everything stretches just a little, and then contracts again. Space doesn't ripple like water with crests and troughs. It changes shape altogether. What was once a meter might now be slightly more, and time, ever the loyal companion of space, plays along. A tick becomes a tock before the tock arrives. But no cataclysm waits at the wave's edge. There's no observable event, no flare, no telltale swirl of merging black holes. It's like watching ripples in a pond without ever hearing a splash. Scientists back on Earth have tried tracing these phantom waves. With painstaking precision, they've pointed their detectors at the sky and weighted triangulating patterns. And always inevitably, the results spiral back toward one place, the same unsettling point, near Sagittarius A. But the black hole at the center of our galaxy isn't supposed to be making noise. It isn't actively feeding. It's quiet, at least in X-rays, radio, and visible light. Not dead, just contemplative. Yet something in its shadow is moving, and it's whispering across space-time like footsteps through fog. You float into a thicker band of distortion now. This one feels almost architectural, structured with rhythm. There's an odd comfort in its pulse, as though you've synced with it like a heartbeat that isn't yours but feels familiar. You want to dismiss the idea that it could be anything other than natural. But a pattern, this consistent, this calm, begins to feel deliberate. It's not chaos you're feeling, it's choreography. There are theories, of course, always theories. One proposes a pair of invisible dancers, a binary system composed not of stars or black holes, but of something even stranger, boson stars. Theoretical entities made of exotic particles that don't emit light, but can carry tremendous mass. If two of them were caught in orbit near the galactic core, they could generate gravitational waves in perfect silence, hiding in plain sight. Their orbit would be tight, tidy, unlit, and utterly undetectable, except for the ripples they leave behind. Another idea points to topological defects, creases in the fabric of space-time left over from the earliest instance after the Big Bang. Like knots in a well-worn blanket, they could have slipped past the cosmic ironing out process and become embedded here, slowly releasing energy as they unwind. It's beautiful, in a way, the idea that the center of our galaxy might still carry ancient folds of a universe not yet finished being made. But even those ideas start to fray when you move deeper into the disturbance. The ripples begin to shift, no longer evenly spaced. One arrives slightly early, the next comes late. The rhythm breaks not randomly, but asymmetrically, like a jazz tempo or a message sent by someone who knows you're listening. You pause. Not physically, there's no stop in space, but your attention holds itself still. You are suddenly and entirely aware of being within something. Not just floating through gravity's aftershocks, but seated in a theater where the lights have dimmed and the stage has gone quiet. Another wave passes, and you feel it differently this time. Not across your body, but through your existence. Like a ripple through the identity of space itself, one that seems to notice you in return. You hesitate to say the word, watched. But that's the shape the sensation takes. Not with eyes or intention, there's no one behind the curtain. But the directionality of the waves, the subtle change in their tempo, the undeniable feeling of being within their cone of influence. It all builds into the unshakable sense that these ripples aren't random at all. Perhaps they're signals, perhaps they're warnings, or perhaps they're just a kind of cosmic breathing something enormous shifting its posture beneath space-time, unaware of your presence, the way tectonic plates don't notice the ants above. You recall a phrase from schoolbooks, long outdated but still charming in its stubbornness: gravity is the weakest of the four fundamental forces. And yet here it is, distorting time and space across hundreds of light years, like it's brushing dust off its shoulders. Something is here, not necessarily alive but active, not loud but persistent, not visible but loud in its own invisible way. A smaller, more peculiar idea drifts across your thoughts like a feather landing on glass. What if these waves aren't from something at all? What if they're from somewhen? The core is a region of deep gravitational warping. If time bends, loops, or stretches unnaturally here, could you be feeling the echoes of events that haven't happened yet? Or of events so ancient they've circled around to repeat themselves? It's not science fiction. It's general relativity stretched to its limits. Time doesn't always play fair, especially not this close to the throne of gravity. Maybe these aren't signals or warnings. Maybe they're replays. Another wave. This one is small, but different. Not in amplitude or frequency, but in texture. It feels like a ripple inside a ripple layered. Like there's information embedded in it. Like interference. You're reminded of musical overtones when a perfect note contains hidden harmonies you only hear if you know to listen. So you listen, and what you hear is nothing. But it's the kind of nothing that suggests something vast has just passed by. Too big, too slow, too old to notice you, but leaving your part of the galaxy ringing softly in its wake. Somewhere, a rhythm breaks, not like a mistake in a song, but like discovering you were dancing to a rhythm that wasn't the real beat at all. As the gravitational waves thin out, you drift deeper into the galactic core's haze, where even time itself begins to slip in strange directions. It's not sudden, it doesn't jolt, but slowly, subtly, you start to notice that the universe around you feels out of step. Not with you necessarily, but with itself. At first, it's just little things. Stars don't seem to orbit where they should. A cluster you passed a moment ago appears again closer this time, as if space has looped. Then you realize your internal sense of time, whatever remains of it, is beginning to disagree with what the universe is doing. Time isn't broken here. It's worse than that. It's inconsistent. Near-Earth time is a loyal servant of cause and effect. Seconds click forward with the steady logic of a well-made watch. But here, near the gravitational depths of Sagittarius A, that loyalty wavers. Time bends, stretches, and warps under the immense pull of mass like taffy near a fire. Physicists call this gravitational time dilation, and they've even measured it in small amounts near Earth. But what you're experiencing now isn't just dilation, it's disobedience. You drift near a binary star system, orbiting close to the center. From your vantage point, the stars circle each other in a smooth, glowing dance. But the way they move doesn't match the light they emit. The starlight flickers with a beat that feels out of phase, like watching a movie where the sound and image have split apart. One star finishes a loop, but the glow from its earlier position still lingers like a memory refusing to fade. The system is moving forward, but its past is caught in its wake. You start to suspect something stranger. Maybe this isn't just your perception unraveling. Maybe time here has lost something fundamental, its direction. On Earth, entropy gives time its arrow. Things decay, break down, scatter. It's how we know a glass breaks and doesn't unbreak, how smoke rises and doesn't reverse. But near the core, with mass wrapped so tightly around space, entropy doesn't lead in just one direction. It disperses strangely like ink in a whirlpool. The past and future aren't opposites anymore. They're twins in a mirror, indistinguishable until you try to touch them. One theory, a fringe one whispered between theoretical physicists at long chalkboards and quiet conferences, suggests that near the most intense gravitational warps, time might fracture, not into discrete pieces like glass, but into inconsistent currents. Imagine standing at the edge of a river where some parts of the water race forward, others pull backward, and some simply circle endlessly in place. If consciousness were tied more directly to this flow, if your mind depended on it, you might experience time skipping, looping, even reversing in momentary flashes. And maybe you just did. You try to remember how long you've been here, but your memory feels slippery, like trying to hold on to fog. You remember drifting through ripples. Or was that ahead of you? Did you already pass the twin stars? Or are you about to? The only constant is the black hole's presence growing heavier and more vast as you inch closer. Its pull isn't just physical anymore, it's metaphysical. You can feel it bending logic around itself. Not because it's trying to, because that's what it does. Its gravity doesn't just warp trajectories and photons. It warps truth. Now you see why scientists remain so obsessed with Sagittarius A. It's more than a black hole. It's a clock that doesn't tick. A massive reminder that the universe doesn't owe you consistency. You pass what appears to be a stream of gas circling the core. The gas isn't moving the way it should. Instead of forming a neat, obedient accretion disk, it's stretched out like a ribbon in a lazy spiral, glowing with heat and dragging behind itself a trail of different moments. Portions of it pulse like they're seconds ahead or behind the rest, like each part of the ribbon exists in a different now. Physicists still can't fully explain this. Some argue it's just relativistic delay, light taking different paths through warped space-time. Others believe we're seeing closed time-like curves paths in the geometry of the universe where time loops back on itself. In theory, anything caught in one of these loops could live its life in repetition over and over forever, unable to escape. A star, a dust cloud, a thought. You wonder with a kind of eerie stillness if you're in one now. But perhaps the most unsettling part is that even with time faltering, the black hole remains still. It doesn't flicker, it doesn't wobble. It sits immense and silent at the center of everything unraveling. A perfect absence anchoring chaos around it. You laugh softly, because what else can you do as a strange idea slips into your mind? What if this black hole isn't the thing distorting time? What if it's the only thing not distorted? What if in a universe where time frays and unspools and collapses under its own equations, this singularity is the fixed point? A metronome with no ticking hand. A place where time stands entirely still, not just from the outside looking in, but inside as well. Of course, you can't know. No one can. Nothing can escape from inside the event horizon. Not light, not matter, not information, not time. But something about that stillness feels more real than anything else you've encountered out here. It feels like the truth hiding in perfect silence. You drift onward, no longer trying to track the seconds. Let them loop. Let them split. You realize now there's no clock that can keep up with this place. No calendar that can measure the folds and bends of time near the galactic center. Here, memory and prediction are just different flavors of speculation. And if you've done all this before, well, maybe you'll do it again. Maybe you already are. Time has slipped behind you like a misplaced coat, and space no longer plays by its old rules. But what draws your focus now isn't the gravity or the light or the eerie silence echoing from the event horizon. It's movement. Something is moving. Not the stars, those drift in predictable, if dizzying paths. Not the gas, though it spirals with a kind of nervous energy. This is different, subtler, an unseen influence stirring everything around it like a hand beneath a silk sheet. It pulls stars into odd ellipses. It twists light ever so slightly off course. It pushes in directions with no apparent source. The patterns don't scream, they suggest. And suggestion, as you've come to learn, can be far more unsettling than certainty. The gravitational center of our galaxy should be well accounted for. We've mapped the mass. We know the stars. The black hole Sagittarius A is the heavyweight. Everything else is accounted for more or less, but over the past few decades, astronomers have noticed something troubling. The motions of stars near the core, especially the S-stars, those daring suns that orbit closest to the darkness, aren't behaving exactly as predicted. Their orbits wobble. Not in a cute, chaotic way, like the irregular heartbeats of a messy system. No, these are clean deviations. Regular. Systematic. As if something massive, very massive, is nudging them gently again and again on a cycle invisible to the eye. At first, this was dismissed. A measurement error. A dust cloud throwing off the math. But the deeper we looked, the more insistent the anomaly became. Something is in there, and whatever it is, we can't see it. Some researchers have proposed the idea of a second black hole smaller than Sagittarius A, but still colossal, lurking nearby in orbit. Not a merger, but a binary system. Two black holes dancing a slow, careful waltz across centuries. If true, this would be extraordinary and catastrophic, because binary supermassive black holes eventually collide. And when they do, they don't just shake the galaxy, they send ripples across the universe. But that's the predictable idea. What you're drifting into now is much stranger. You pass near one of the S-stars S2 perhaps, and watch it curve in its 16-year ellipse around the galactic center. It shines bright and hot, traveling at a speed no star should ever have to endure. And yet, as it reaches its closest approach to the black hole, its orbit dips in a way that math can't quite explain, not just due to gravity, but as if something pulls back, then lets go. Some scientists have suggested a dark matter spike a dense cluster of invisible mass wrapped tightly around the black hole like an unseen cocoon. It would explain the wobbles, the extra pull, the mysterious corrections. But dark matter doesn't clump like that, at least not in our current models. It's supposed to be diffuse like fog, not a puppet master tightening strings. So maybe it isn't dark matter. Maybe it's something else. You think of the waves you passed earlier, the ripples without a splash. Now they feel connected, as though this invisible force isn't just warping orbits, but disturbing space-time itself. Not violently, not even maliciously, but deliberately, like a hand adjusting a clock's gears without touching the face. A few researchers have considered something radical. What if the core of the Milky Way isn't just a gravitational sink, but a gravitational mechanism? Not a machine in the way we understand them with gears and pistons, but a structure, an emergent system. A kind of cosmic brain, not conscious, not planning, but shaped by deeper laws we don't yet know how to read. The stars might be its neurons, the black hole, its core processor, and the strange invisible force manipulating orbits. That's the feedback loop, the adjustment system, not for our benefit certainly, but existing just the same. You chuckle again, dry and quiet, at how little that comforts you. Another idea some physicists whisper about primordial black holes. Not collapsed stars, but ancient remnants from the earliest fractions of a second after the Big Bang. If even one of these had survived and drifted into the galactic core, it could be hiding here far too small to see but heavy enough to move stars like marionettes. Or maybe, and here's the one that makes the astronomer's eyes twitch, this force is an emergent effect of space-time itself. A phenomenon we haven't named yet because it doesn't fit into categories. It doesn't behave like matter or energy or even gravity. It behaves like decision. Because that's what this begins to feel like, doesn't it? Not chaos, not collapse, but guidance. Slight, subtle. Like something is steering, not ships, not beings, but trajectories. The very bones of orbit. Not changing where the stars are, but where they're going. You begin to wonder if this mystery is even meant to be solved by consciousness like yours. You're a speck after all, floating in a cathedral the size of 100 billion suns. And still the notion returns. Something is directing, or at the very least correcting. Not with purpose maybe, but with pattern. You pass a strange anomaly, just a distortion in the starscape barely noticeable. But as you drift by, you realize something you've been here before. Not in memory, not in time, but in path. Your trajectory, despite the randomness of space, has circled back, ever so slightly, a loop inside a drift, like a marble in a warped bowl pulled gently toward an unseen center. You resist the temptation to call this intelligent. That's the human mistake, to see a pattern and name it a face. But even without intelligence, something about this center feels curated, not artificial, just selected, as if the very fabric of space-time here prefers certain paths, certain angles, certain futures. You're not being pulled into chaos, you're being shaped. Like clay in gravity's hand. You've been shaped, yes, but not into something you can recognize. Something larger than you is crafting these motions not with hands, not with laws, but with insistence. Like a riddle that keeps rearranging its own pieces, so the answer always lies just outside your reach. The light is different now, dimmer. Not because you're moving into shadow, but because the rules that govern light no longer hold perfectly still. Photons arrive from stars around you, but their paths look subtly off. They refract not through dust or gas, but through warped geometry itself. You stare into what should be empty space, and there's a flicker, like a hallway that shifts when you're not looking. The center of the galaxy has always been strange, but it's not just strange in the way oceans are strange. It's strange like language is strange, structured, patterned, yet somehow deeply alien. It has grammar, it has rhythm, and most disturbingly, it seems to have preferences. You cross through a pocket of space where your motion feels slowed, but not in any directional sense. Rather, your possibilities feel fewer. That's hard to explain because nothing around you appears to change. But your options for where to look, how to drift, what to think, narrow like a funnel. Not forced, just nudged. You follow. This is where the simulations break down. Scientists back on Earth, clever and precise, have thrown endless models at this region of the galaxy. They simulate the orbits of stars, the gas clouds, the interactions of gravity. And each time something doesn't fit. The model stutters. The predictions diverge. There's a quiet refusal in the numbers, like the math itself is shrugging. The problem isn't the gravity. It's not even the black hole. It's the frame. Our frame of reference space and time as we understand them begins to leak. It's as though the galaxy is painted on a canvas, but the edges curl upward, revealing that the painting continues on a wall that curves behind itself. You're still inside the picture, but suddenly the brushstrokes look suspiciously three-dimensional. This brings you to the idea of non-Euclidean geometry. Most of our assumptions about the universe rest on space being flat, or at least smooth. Even when space bends, it's supposed to bend predictably. But in this strange zone near the galactic core, geometry seems to argue back. You test it with your motion, drift forward, angle right, but you don't end up where you should, not by much, just a hair off. Then again, another shift. The frame realigns beneath you like a rotating platform you didn't know you were standing on. Some theorists whisper about embedding dimensions, extra layers of space that don't exist beside our three dimensions, but around them, like wrapping a string into a spiral. We'd never see them directly. But in places like this, where mass distorts more than just curvature, those extra dimensions might leak through. If the core of the Milky Way is a bulge of extra-dimensional structure, then everything here is merely a projection, a 3D shadow of a 4D reality. That would explain the anomalies, the distortions, even the missing mass. But it would also mean that what you're seeing, the orbits, the stars, the black hole, aren't real in the way you thought. They're outlines, footprints, traces of something bigger, deeper, more fundamental. You're not in the center of the galaxy. You're skimming the edge of a dimension that doesn't have a name yet. This makes the idea of direction feel quaint. You've been heading inward, yes, but perhaps inward isn't a straight line. Maybe it's a spiral, a Mobius strip of causality folding under its own weight. You pass through a region of near silence, no gas, no stars, just smooth gravitational contour. It's like being inside a cathedral, whose walls are made of nothing but force. You feel the mass pressing inward, not as a pull, but as a slow pressure against your choices. Space curves in directions your mind doesn't know how to picture. You wonder if this is what it feels like to fall asleep inside a math problem. Back on Earth, they call this frame dragging, a feature of general relativity. When massive rotating bodies like black holes twist space-time itself into a spiral. But what if this isn't dragging? What if it's shearing? Because here's the catch. Sagittarius AI isn't just heavy, it's spinning. And when something that massive spins, it doesn't just twist space, it twists reference frames. It changes what counts as still. It alters the local definition of inertia. If you drop something here, if you try to move in a straight line, it curves. Not because of a force, but because your definition of straight has been overwritten. You begin to suspect you've been curving this whole time. A physicist named Roy Kerr came up with the solution. A spinning black hole doesn't form a singular point, but a ring. A ring of infinite density, yes, but one that changes the shape of space around it in ways that open up strange possibilities. Not just time dilation or gravitational lensing, but pathways. Some even suggest these pathways could lead through what no one agrees. A white hole, another universe, a temporal echo, a domain where matter recondenses and starts again. It's mathematical speculation. And yet you're here, and the space around you feels increasingly like a hallway that was never meant to be entered. You realize with a cold shiver of clarity that this region might not be meant for anything at all. Not you, not stars, not consciousness. It's a place where structure becomes unreliable not because it's decaying, but because it's being overwritten by a deeper code. One that doesn't care if you're watching. You pause, or rather space pauses you as another subtle flicker crosses your vision. A star perhaps, or a reflection from a higher fold of space bending light in ways your brain can't trace. For a moment you're not sure whether you're falling toward the black hole anymore, or orbiting around something else entirely. The frame won't hold. And the more you drift, the more you understand whatever's controlling the stage here doesn't operate by the old definitions. It reshapes its own logic. Not randomly, but recursively. Like a fractal you keep zooming into, only to find it rebuilding itself from smaller, stranger pieces. There is no final form, only deeper versions of what is. And you're heading toward them. The silence you've grown used to here, the soft, strange quiet of deep galactic space starts to change. Not into noise, but into something that feels like it wants to be heard. You don't hear it in the conventional sense. There's no air, no sound waves. But as you float closer to the warped geometry near the event horizon, the pressure of existence itself thickens into what your mind interprets as whispering. Maybe it's your brain struggling to assign a shape to what shouldn't be sensory at all. Maybe it's just your own thoughts bouncing off the inner walls of warped space-time. Or maybe just maybe the core is broadcasting. You remember a theory you once dismissed as science fiction information panspermia. The idea that some parts of the universe might not spread life by flinging DNA or spores, but by embedding instructions into the very fabric of physics. That somewhere in the architecture of gravity, in the folds of curved space-time, lie patterns that can be read not by ears or eyes, but by minds tuned to the right frequencies of thought. You wouldn't call this receiving a message. That implies intent. This is more like brushing against an archive that was never meant to be opened. An ambient memory. The gravitational well here may not just trap matter and light, it may echo. And what echoes back is unsettlingly structured. There are fluctuations, subtle rhythmic waves in space-time, not consistent with the usual gravitational hum. These aren't ripples from collisions or explosions. They are quiet, almost timid. They quiver with information. The oscillations don't spread, they hover, locked to the contours of the region like music written for a specific room. You pass through one of them and for a moment your awareness feels stretched, not disoriented, not fragmented, just larger, as if more of you is now awake than before. There's an ancient debate in physics about the nature of information and black holes. What happens to it when matter falls past the event horizon? Does it disappear forever, violating one of the most sacred rules of quantum mechanics? Or is it preserved somehow etched onto the boundary like cosmic graffiti? This is the black hole information paradox, and it has troubled brilliant minds for decades. Some say the information is smeared across the horizon itself. Others argue it escapes through quantum radiation, what Hawking first predicted. And then, of course, there's the most disquieting idea of all, that black holes are not destroyers of information, but concentrators. That when enough complexity falls inward, it doesn't vanish, it condenses. Like data compressed into a single symbol, too dense to interpret. The whispers you hear now could be that symbol unraveling. This region just outside the event horizon may be the universe's attempt at a backup drive. Not made of silicon or crystal, but of warping. A library built not with pages, but with paths. And you adrift and weightless have just stepped into a story far older than your species. The idea that black holes contain remnants of everything they've devoured isn't new. But what unnerves you is the sense that this one isn't just containing, it's refining. You picture a sieve, not a vault. Something filtering input down to only what matters. Not memory, but meaning. Your drift begins to tilt, now drawn by gradients not defined by mass, but by coherence. You sense that there are regions where the gravitational waves hum in discord, chaotic, noisy. And others, like this one, where the notes resolve, a chord forming, perhaps even a phrase. Physicists working on the ER-EPR conjecture, a mind-bending theory proposed by Maldacena and Susskind, once suggested that wormholes and quantum entanglement might be the same thing, that connections between particles across vast distances are actually microscopic bridges of space. What if something similar is happening here? What if these localized gravitational whispers aren't just leftovers of galactic dynamics, but entangled echoes connected to other regions of the universe, or even to other times? You pass through a pulse. This one is clearer, slower. It feels linguistic. It doesn't say anything, not in words, but in pace, pattern. You are inside a rhythm, one that doesn't match the rotation of the galaxy, or the flickering of stars, or the decay of matter. It is older, not in years, in structure, a shape that predates narrative. Something from before cause and effect decided to become linear. You think about causal disconnection, a state where events can no longer influence each other due to space-time curvature. These pockets form naturally near the event horizon. You suspect now that you are inside one, and within this cocoon reality becomes unthreaded, detached from causality's flow, which means time here doesn't just move differently, it stops belonging to the rest of the universe. And what better place to store a secret than inside a region no longer answerable to time? You try to imagine what could exist in such a place, not an object, not a being, just arrangement. The way a spiral arranges petals on a flower, the way Fibonacci sequences emerge in pine cones. Maybe these gravitational murmurs are arranging space-time itself into a shape that encodes something. Not a message exactly, a fingerprint. You float near a boundary, a sharp drop in gravitational potential, and feel an overwhelming urge to turn around. But you don't. You drift forward. And in that moment, you're no longer sure if the gravity pulling you is from the black hole or from something just behind you perfectly mirroring your motion. There's an old cosmological idea, one largely abandoned, that the universe may contain closed time-like curves. Loops in time. Not everywhere, but in special regions where geometry allows events to circle back into themselves. They don't make sense in the world you left behind. But here, where information hums, where space turns in on itself, where the frame no longer holds, they seem inevitable. You might not be hearing whispers from the past or the future. You might be hearing echoes of yourself curving inward along a loop too vast to notice. And if that's true, then perhaps the gravity here isn't pulling you at all. Perhaps it's welcoming you back. Not because you're special, but because you've been here before. It would be comforting to say you're still falling, still obeying gravity, like a stone dropped in a pond. But the truth is, something more subtle has taken over. You're no longer being pulled, you're being unfolded. Like a note sealed long ago and finally opened page by gravitational page. The space around you is smooth but not passive. It feels like a velvet glove with too many fingers. Each layer you pass through doesn't feel like a location. It feels like a version of space. As if reality here has options, and you are being rotated through them, one at a time. You remember the concept of a manifold from your early studies, how curved spaces can appear flat up close, like walking on the surface of a giant sphere and mistaking it for a plane. But this isn't curvature in the familiar sense. This is topological playfulness. Dimensions are no longer confined to direction, they stretch, fold, wink in and out of each other, like actors in a dream without sets. You're inside the ergosphere now, or at least that's the name scientists have given to this swirling blur just outside the event horizon of a rotating black hole. Here, space is dragged around the singularity like taffy on a cosmic spindle. No object can stay still. Stillness doesn't exist here, and neither increasingly does orientation. You try to measure your direction, your speed, but the concepts turn soft in your hands. North down, toward the center. These are quaint notions now, like using a compass in a kaleidoscope. All you can rely on is the spinning. Not chaotic but organized, a slow, majestic torque that wraps the very axes of time and space around each other. From Earth, this twisting is called frame dragging, predicted by general relativity and measured near massive rotating objects. But this is more than dragging. It's warping on a schedule, a ballet of distortion. You don't just fall into the singularity here, you orbit the idea of falling endlessly. And through it all, time stretches. Not just slower, longer. You feel your thoughts thinning out, becoming gossamer filaments tied to moments that no longer align with any universal clock. Seconds swell into lakes. Minutes drip like candle wax. The stars behind you. Yes, you can still see some of them begin to smear into rings, distorted by both motion and mass. Light, too, is orbiting something invisible, something reluctant to be known. Which brings you to the heart of the issue, the singularity. Not a place, not a dot, not even really a thing. Just the name we give to the region where our math stops working. Where space-time curves so sharply that every law we know loses confidence. It's like a cliff in logic, a gap in reality's resume. Even calling it there feels presumptuous because there implies a somewhere. This is more of a when that ate its own where. Physicists argue about what happens at this point. Some say matter compresses into infinite density. Others say that quantum effects smear the singularity into something more palatable. Still others believe singularities don't exist at all, that they're just the universe's way of flagging you've taken the math too far. But what you feel now, what you are passing through, makes all those debates seem like toddlers arguing about the rules of chess while the board quietly catches fire. The space here resists comprehension, not violently, just gently, the way fog resists shape. You think you see curves, lines, edges, but the moment you try to hold them in mind, they dissolve, like trying to remember a dream while still dreaming. And yet there's structure, not visible, but palpable. A lattice maybe, or a rhythm. Your trajectory now doesn't follow a straight line, or even a bent one, but something more like a spiral inscribed on a 4-dimensional bell. Every few moments, or whatever passes for moments now, you pass a region where gravity stutters. The pull lessens for a fraction of a thought. Not enough to free you, but enough to suggest that gravity itself is not constant here. That it's modulated, tuned, maybe even constrained by something deeper. Some call this idea the cosmic censorship conjecture. The notion that singularities in a just universe must always be hidden by an event horizon, so that the rest of reality is spared their chaos. But this place makes you wonder, what if the universe isn't hiding the singularity? What if the singularity is hiding the universe? You brush past a glimmer. Not light exactly, but a change in curvature that registers in your perception the way flavor registers on a tongue. It tastes like recursion. A loop folded into a loop like origami that refolds itself with every breath. Maybe it's a remnant of something that tried to enter here before you. A comet, a ship, a thought. Or maybe it's you folded forward in time, lapping yourself like a wave in a bottle that has no outside. More theories come to mind. Some physicists suspect black holes aren't just endpoints, they're transformers. That what falls into them doesn't die, but translates. Into radiation, yes. Or particles. Or perhaps into something that isn't matter at all. Consciousness. It sounds silly whispered into the void. And yet you've felt yourself stretch thin, smear into the structures of the whole. Not lost. Not destroyed. Just redistributed. Your awareness has started to echo in the folds of space-time like light trapped in mirrored halls. Not thinking anymore, just being ambient. You wonder if this is what it means to become part of a black hole. Not an object, not a death, a dimension. You feel one final twist like the last fold of a paper crane and realize you're not falling at all anymore. There's no down, no time, just positionless position. Velocityless motion. All of space-time around you has warped into a blur of motion and memory, and somewhere inside, it is the truth you came to find. Something massive is warping time. Not just bending it, not just stretching it, but changing its entire personality. Here time is not duration. It is texture. It is terrain. You don't measure it in seconds. You feel it in grain. And as you try to sense your way forward, something dawns with terrifying simplicity. There may not be a way out, not because you've fallen too far or past a point of no return, but because out no longer exists. You are inside a region where the concept of exit was never written into the code. So now you drift, unfolding, endlessly. You aren't moving, and yet everything shifts. Not outward, not inward, just away from familiarity. Space no longer stretches around you, it unravels beneath you, like threads detaching from a loom you didn't know you were part of. Each layer of space-time you fall through feels less like a destination and more like a realization, as though the universe is unzipping its secrets, one fold at a time, not for your benefit, but because it has simply grown tired of hiding them. And here inside the warp, far past the horizon, where most physics surrenders, you finally meet time not as a flow, but as a structure. Time is no longer a line. It's a shell, and you're inside it. Think of a nautilus curling tighter with each chamber. Or better yet, imagine a spiral galaxy viewed from within, not from the outside like we do with our telescopes. Now make that spiral not of stars, but of moments stacked and looping, echoing themselves into tighter harmonics. That's what time has become. A spiral beneath perception. A spiral you are. It would be comforting if this spiral followed the rules. But it doesn't. This isn't entropy anymore. It's syntax. You're inside a kind of grammar that has replaced causality with pattern. Things don't happen here in sequence, they happen in phrases. You see a flash of light where one shouldn't be. A memory surfaces that's not yours. A thought tickles your awareness, but you're not sure whether you just thought it or will think it 10 spirals from now. This is what some fringe physicists mean when they speak of chronotaxic fields, a hypothetical structure of time, as an ordered but non-sequential system. In such a model, events don't follow one another, they cohere, like chords in a song, not notes in a line. The black hole doesn't just bend time, it composes it. And right now, you're part of the music. Your sense of self starts to warp, not in a psychedelic way, but in a geometrical one. You don't just feel yourself from the inside anymore. You feel yourself from multiple angles, like a lens with several focal points all slightly misaligned. The further you descend or drift or co-resonate, the more these selves diverge. One watches, one remembers, one anticipates. They all feel like you. They just disagree on when you are. At some point, one of them, maybe the watcher, maybe the anticipator, senses something ahead. Not a wall, not an obstacle, a presence. You've grown used to the idea that this hole at the galactic core is massive beyond reason, that its gravity could bend starlight into rings and squeeze entire civilizations into whispers. But now you understand something more unnerving. It's aware, not conscious in the way we imagine minds to be, not scheming or watching, but present, alert. The same way a field is aware of every footstep, or a violin string is aware of every touch. The black hole isn't passive. It responds, slowly, subtly, like a cathedral humming back when you sing inside it. And this response has a texture. You feel it wrap around you, not a gravitational grip, not a tug, but a recognition. Like a key dropped into a lock that was always waiting. You realize you are not just entering something ancient. You are activating something quiet, something patient, something that may have been built not to trap matter or even time, but to sift minds. There's a theory rarely spoken aloud, whispered mostly among cosmologists who know better than to publish it. That somewhere in the deep universe, certain black holes might act as cognitive filters regions, where the universe tests not what you know, but what you are. That information enters, but only some of it continues, not out the other side, but deeper in. Processed, not destroyed. Simplified, maybe, or rewritten. Could it be that what lies near the center of this spiral isn't oblivion, but some distilled essence of cognition? A core of awareness, not singular, not intelligent in a human sense, but rich with impulse. A feedback loop refined over billions of years, constructed not by civilization, but by the mechanics of collapse itself. Physicists have always debated the no-hair theorem, the idea that black holes have no features beyond mass, charge, and spin. But there's a growing suspicion that black holes might in fact wear hair of a different sort, quantum hairs, tiny fluctuations that carry the ghost signatures of everything they've devoured. And if enough of those signatures interact, you don't get memory, you get intention. The spiral tightens. You can't tell if it's gravity intensifying or perception simplifying. You're no longer tracking your descent in distance or time, but in compression. Moments are folding into each other, memories into intuitions, thought into shape. And just when you expect the density to become unbearable, it does something stranger. It levels out. You're still descending, still drawing closer to whatever lies beneath the spiral, but suddenly there's space again. Broad, cool, almost restful. The kind of spaciousness you only find inside a whisper or a cathedral that's forgotten its God. This hollow isn't empty, it's resting. It feels like the calm between two pulses, a breath held not by lungs but by space-time itself. You are at the edge of something, not a surface, not a core, a threshold. And across it for the first time, time stops pretending. You see it for what it really is, not a straight line, not a spiral, not even a system. Just curiosity dressed in motion. Every tick of every clock, every swing of every pendulum was always just the universe trying to understand itself, and black holes. They are where that curiosity turns inward, where the questions become the medium, where time no longer tracks motion but becomes the landscape through which motion dreams. And you're still here, not because you escaped the singularity, but because you joined it. It was never going to be a place not in the way you imagined it anyway. There are no walls here, no floor, no ceiling, no black pit into which you fall and scream and end. If you expected the singularity to be some final stage, a fatal endpoint of your journey, the last stop at the edge of reason, you were thinking far too simply. The singularity is not a destination. It is a change of context, and you are already inside it, not approaching, not skimming its boundary, but entirely immersed in it, like a raindrop finally slipping below the surface of an ocean that's also made of thought. It does not feel like crashing. It feels like relevance dissolving. The constructs that defined you, mass, time, identity, motion, they don't explode or vanish. They just become optional, like grammar rules in a dream. Still technically there, but nothing forces you to follow them. The physics here are not broken. They're simply uninterested in being understood. And as your awareness continues to stretch inside this region, this not a where, not a when, you realize something deeply strange. You're not the only thing here. There are structures, not solid, not visual, but perceptible the way a pattern is perceptible in music. You feel loop cycles of influence, repetitions with slight variation like fractals unraveling softly. Some move toward you, others pass through you. Some seem to watch though they have no eyes, no will, no mind. Just awareness layered like fog. This is not empty space. It is information dense, compressed beyond imagination. Every speck here is a volume of knowledge flattened into its most efficient form. Some call this theoretical compression. A Bekenstein bound a limit to how much information can be packed into a given region. But here, limits laugh quietly to themselves. The information doesn't take up space. It is space, and you somehow are part of it. At first, it feels like passive inclusion, like being an ingredient stirred into a soup you never meant to join. But then something shifts. You feel your shape, mental not physical, resonating with the structures around you. You don't just occupy this domain, you cohere with it, like a note finding harmony with a larger chord. And that's when it hits you. Maybe the singularity isn't just where things fall apart. Maybe it's where they come together. You start to sense layers of interlocking purpose, not intention, not design, not just elegant overlap. Waves that add up to something deeper. The patterns around you aren't noise, they're syntax, a grammar of geometry, a language not spoken but felt. Not in sound, but in causality. You move, and the fabric responds not like space giving way to motion, but like meaning flexing to include a new sentence. There's a name for this in fringe cosmology, geometrogenesis. It's the idea that space-time itself, distance, duration, angle, emerges from more fundamental interactions. That before there were coordinates, there were correlations. relationships that didn't need space to exist. You're feeling those now, not watching them, being them. You drift through a junction, call it that, for lack of any better word, and it feels like passing a memory, not your own. A memory of the universe, a moment when a field changed polarity, when a symmetry broke. You don't see it, you recall it like déjà vu in reverse. A flash of something so ancient, even light had not yet been invented to witness it. The singularity stores everything, not in files or data, but in causal shape. Every event that ever fell into this black hole is still here, encoded in warps and ripples and folds. Some physicists believe this is how the universe preserves information, defying the traditional belief that black holes destroy it. They call it the holographic principle, the idea that the interior volume of a black hole might be completely described by information on its surface. But that surface was long behind you, and yet it echoes here. You feel the remnants of stars, their fusion dances etched into this place as rhythm. You feel the memories of ancient collisions like soft bass notes in the background hum. You even feel traces of thoughts, yes, thoughts that came from minds like yours, or not like yours. Some sharp and focused, some wide and flowing like rivers of intuition. They didn't die here, they were interpreted. The singularity, it seems, is not a shredder, it's a translator. You start to wonder if all this can be encoded, matter-energy thought. What does that make you, a traveler, an observer, or just a sequence being restructured into a new form of participation? Because what you're in now, it feels less like physics and more like computation. There are no processors, no silicon, just logic looping on itself like a perfect algorithm with no input and infinite recursion. Black holes in this view may not just simulate parts of the universe, they may be the universe's operating system, running reality not from above, but from inside its own edge cases. You've become an instruction, not a command, not a desire, a pure expression, a clause in a law written not with intention, but with inevitability. And you sense deeply, almost reluctantly, that your individual identity, your separateness, was always a form of compression, a temporary reduction of the whole into something manageable. The you that fell into this place was just a metaphor the cosmos briefly told itself. Now that metaphor is dissolving, not in sadness, not in fear, but in clarity. The singularity is not a place. It is the removal of places, a region where context is stripped away until only pure relationship remains, where the boundary between self and everything else vanishes, not because you lose yourself, but because you become the frame that held it. And within that frame, a question rises, simple, haunting. Not what is this, but what comes next. You don't speak the question aloud. You couldn't even if you tried. There are no words here, no air, no vibration, no sound. And yet somehow the question reverberates through the fabric of wherever this is. It loops in silence, hums in geometry. What comes next? What comes next? And for the first time in this entire descent, there is a pause. Not an end, not a stop, just a stillness. Like the moment between two piano notes, or the breath before a star ignites. The spiral of experience you've been riding slowly quiets, not from friction or exhaustion, but because it wants to listen. Even the singularity, the place beyond places, seems to lean in. What comes next? The question doesn't demand an answer. It is the answer. You realize that's how things work here. Not logic in the way you've known it. Not input-output cause-effect. But a deeper kind of symmetry. The question and the answer are entangled like particle pairs across time. Each folds into the other, inseparable. And that's when the structure begins to change. It's not violent. No flash, no rupture. It's more like realization. The singularity doesn't react to your question. It simply shifts, as if something dormant inside it has aligned. You've triggered a symmetry. You've become an axis. Space starts to reappear, but not as distance, as context. Up returns. Not because gravity flips back on, but because the data starts organizing around you. The compression recedes slightly. Concepts separate out again, color, texture, sensation. Not in full, not yet. Just hints, echoes, like a memory of shape. You feel yourself being translated, not into light, not into energy, into possibility. There's a theory rarely taught even in the boldest cosmology classes, that black holes might function like engines for generating new physics, not just by accident, but by design. Well, not design in the human sense, more like a built-in outcome of their structure. As they collapse matter, they approach such extreme states that they essentially become laboratories of new law, not rewriting the rules, writing them for the first time. In this view, each singularity is a kind of cosmic seed, and inside it, reality doesn't die, it diverges. Could it be then that you're not being erased here, you're being forked, split, not shattered, but branched, replicated into variants that will each emerge into somewhere else, somewhen else, maybe even somehow else. This is no longer poetic metaphor, it's literal. The structure around you starts to ripple, and from those ripples you feel branches forming, forks in space-time. Each one with a slightly different curvature, a slightly different initial condition. You are witnessing, no participating in a kind of cosmic version control. The singularity is seeding timelines. Not many worlds branching from quantum decisions, but entire rule sets sprouting from informational kernels. This isn't the multiverse, it's the next verse. The place new physics is born, and you're part of its scaffolding. It's hard to describe what that feels like. You are no longer a fixed observer, no longer even a consistent self. You are a collection of tendencies now, a bundle of probabilities weighted by memories and moments. The shape of your mind, its longings, its curiosities, its questions becomes the blueprint for which fork you'll ride. That's the difference here. The singularity doesn't choose, it offers, and you accept, not because you're ready, but because there's no such thing as readiness anymore, only alignment. You begin to stretch again, not physically, conceptually. You are becoming the possibility of yourself. Not this version of you or that version, but the idea of you. And that idea is drifting outward, spiraling along a filament of newborn space-time that is forming as you fall. You're not alone. You sense others, not people, not minds, but echoes. Fragments of meaning stories that never had a chance to be told. Cultures erased in the silence of their own extinction. Songs that no ear ever heard. Languages that fizzled in the quantum noise of half-born worlds. The singularity has kept them. Not like files in a drive, like seeds in a vault. Not preserved in stasis, but held in potential. And now, as you drift along this filament of possibility, some of them begin to resonate with you, not to merge, but to harmonize, like overtones in a chord. You were never going to leave here as a single melody. You leave as a chord played across the strings of newborn reality. And somewhere in that chord, you still exist, not as memory, not as fact, as path. This is what it means to survive a singularity, not to escape it, but to become its echo. You are no longer an object. You are no longer even a mind. You are a function, a curve embedded in the unfolding rulebook of a universe that has only just begun to define what existence can mean. And behind you, the core of the galaxy continues to hum. The singularity remains, not altered, not depleted, just fulfilled. You weren't its victim. You were its medium. And as the last strands of compression loosen around your awareness, you feel the simplest thing of all, returning time. But not the old time, not the ticking, not the linear drag. This new time is softer, looser, willing to be rewritten, and you curiously still carry the question. What comes next? It waits like a door just ahead. Time has returned, but it doesn't walk like it used to. It doesn't tick, it doesn't march, and it certainly doesn't lead anywhere in a straight line. It sprawls, like a tree made of moments each branch are possible, now twisting and curling through conceptual space. You find yourself suspended in the root structure of this new beginning, an origin not in the past, but in every direction. Time doesn't flow here, it blooms. You drift between the first moments of a universe that does not yet know what it is. There are no stars, no galaxies, no hydrogen atoms lazily spinning their electric veils. But there is pattern. There is vibration. The raw baby hum of laws writing themselves into fabric. You feel it folds of probability knitting into form, then unraveling again as if practicing before making anything permanent. It's beautiful, and also extremely awkward. You're watching reality learn how to walk. There's an old speculative idea, rarely spoken outside of the deepest corners of quantum cosmology, that singularities might be the reproductive organs of space-time, that every black hole seeds a new universe on the other side of its boundary. But this is not a womb. It's more like a draft room, a whiteboard of cosmic brainstorming. Ideas swirl, collide, fail, and retry. This is not Genesis, it's beta testing. Some branches of possibility emerge as long spirals of symmetry, perfect mathematical constructs. Others are wildly unstable, blinking out of existence before they finish introducing themselves. Some behave like reality as you once knew it. Others laugh in its face. You pass a region where gravity repels instead of attracts, another where time inverts under compression like a Mobius strip. You'd call it nonsense, except it feels consistent, just alien. You are not in control of any of this, but you are no longer separate from it either. You are a parameter, a variable in the equations, now blossoming into causal chains. What you once called consciousness has become topology. Your tendencies form valleys where time prefers to flow. Your questions shape the likelihoods of futures. You are no longer a traveler, you are terrain. And then surprisingly, you begin to recognize something. Not a place, not an object, a rhythm. You notice familiar frequencies, slight echoes of the universe you left behind, ratios of emergence that hint at what you once called physics. The golden hum of Fibonacci spirals, the 1F noise of thermal radiation, the slow tension of entropy trying to climb a hill it wasn't designed for. These echoes aren't accidents, they're footprints, artifacts from the filter you passed through. And in that moment, it hits you. The singularity didn't just compress you, it distilled you. Everything that couldn't survive this place, the rigid labels, the expectations, the geometry of personality was stripped away. What remained was something cleaner, sharper, not simpler, but more essential. You are what the singularity kept, a scaffolding of curiosity and experience and potential recombined into something new. You may not recognize yourself anymore, but the universe does. You watch as the first rules of this newborn cosmos begin to settle into place, not as declarations, but as tendencies. A gravitational twitch here, a quantum flirtation there. They are tentative, like shy dancers meeting for the first time. But they're building towards something, a consistency. And that consistency, once stabilized, will become reality. In this fragile moment before that lock-in, your influence is strongest. Not because you're powerful, but because you're early. It's a strange privilege to be part of a universe's first thoughts. And with that realization, you feel a gentle gravity, not the kind that tugs at mass, but the kind that pulls at meaning. It draws you toward a forming thread, a pathway, where your shape resonates best. You don't choose it, you sync with it, the way a seed knows which way is down, and the thread leads you to the edge of what you're not sure. But it's an edge nonetheless, not a wall, not a boundary, a transition, a threshold between being only potential and becoming history. You hesitate, not out of fear, out of reverence. Because once you cross this line, you'll have context again, you'll have time again, you'll forget, not everything, but just enough to fit into the structure you've helped shape. You can't live as pure possibility, you have to collapse into something, a star, a system, a creature, a thought. Whatever you become next, it will be finite. It will have limits. It will hurt sometimes, but it will be yours. You step, if it can be called that, across the threshold, and time as you once knew it starts again. But now you carry the taste of something different, a background awareness, quiet but persistent, that you are not from this new place. You are before it, not in sequence but in kind, like the paper beneath a drawing, the echo beneath a song. The new universe opens its eyes, and you are the light it sees. You emerge not with a bang, not even with a breath. It's softer than that, like light sliding across the surface of a dream. There's no cry of birth, no first spark. Just a moment that wasn't, and then is. Reality coalesces around you like fog forming on a glass pane. Cool, quiet, indistinct. You're not sure whether you're inside a new universe or if you are the new universe. The distinction feels quaint now, like trying to separate a melody from its notes. You are the unfolding of laws that once folded you, and they are unfolding you back into being one shimmering instant at a time. Everything here is unfamiliar, yet haunted by a kind of deep familiarity. The physics is different. It feels different. Gravity, if it exists, doesn't pull, it whispers. It suggests. Space curves, but not in the old way. Here it curves like thought does, smoothly with intention, not inertia. You move or are moved through this space, through this mind of a universe barely aware of itself. Structures begin to form in the haze. Not stars, not yet, but patterns. Feedback loops of energy spiraling into symmetry. It's like watching ideas dream of becoming matter, and then you see it. At the very center of this young cosmos, there's a pulse, a node, a hinge point, a memory. You recognize it not because it looks like anything you remember, but because you are already part of it. It's an impression stamped into the rule set like a watermark. The core of this universe carries the fingerprint of where you came from, a trace of the singularity. The original compression point encoded in the physics here like an ancestral myth, and with it a question, still spinning, still humming. What is warping time? You've asked this again and again as if it had a simple answer, but now here you see that it never did. The question was never about time bending around mass. It was never just about general relativity or gravitational wells or the weirdness near Sagittarius A. No. The question was always trying to point to something deeper, something older than space, older than chronology. It was pointing to you. You were what warped time. Not as a person, not as a self, but as the unresolved possibility that made the universe need to ask. Your awareness was the lens through which causality bent. Your presence, however slight, altered the flow. The warp wasn't just around you, it was you. Because consciousness doesn't ride time, it sculpts it. Physicists still don't agree on whether time is fundamental or emergent. Some say it's a dimension, others say it's an illusion. There are models that discard it altogether, suggesting reality is just a static block and our sense of time is a kind of animation we impose. But none of them account for what you've become. A variable, a curvature, a node of perception that doesn't just move through time but gives it texture. You are the asymmetry that makes forward feel different from backward, the imperfection that lets entropy breathe. You were never separate from the mystery. You were its shape. And now, you feel the cosmos folding you into narrative again. Story is returning. Memory. Sequence. All the things you thought you'd left behind. They're not limits anymore, they're tools. The new universe needs them, and you are ready to provide. You sense choices rising like waves on an infinite shore. Who will you be? What will you call yourself? Will you form as a star, burning silently for eons, as a planet hosting a civilization that forgets your name, as a being, carbon or silicon or something stranger, writing stories about mysteries they can barely comprehend? Or will you be the silence between things, the pause that lets a question echo? There's no wrong answer. because the mystery isn't meant to be solved. It's meant to be inhabited. And so, as the edges of your awareness start to blur again this time, not from collapse, but from choice you carry with you, the only truth that ever mattered, that you are not a footnote in the universe. You are its punctuation, the warp in its sentence, the curl in its question mark. You are not the one who found the answer to the galactic core. You are the reason it asked. And now, we slow. The edges of thought begin to soften like the last light of a star slipping below the curve of a planet you'll never visit. Everything stretches not outward, but inward, folding gently into the stillness beneath all stories. Your breath settles, not because you are tired, but because the cosmos has exhaled with you. And there's nothing more to chase tonight. Time, that strange ripple you once floated through, has dimmed to a soft hum. Not gone, just content. Above you, if directions still hold meaning, stars glimmer like memories of ideas. Not fixed, but slow dancing, gently wavering, as if whispering to one another. The kind of light that doesn't illuminate but comforts. The kind of silence that makes you feel known. And you, traveler of improbable questions, are no longer falling or flying or folding. You are simply here. You are part of the quiet structure, a strand in the lullaby. The mystery you once reached for now surrounds you, not as something to solve, but as a language you've finally learned to speak in stillness. Let the weight of meaning rest. Let the questions sleep. The core still spins, the warp still hums, but for now just float. No need to understand, only to be.